I walked out of the conference room. I was defeated. My head was down. And in that moment, I realized after walking out of that room, presenting this same project over 10 different times, trying to drive employee change based off of employee voice, that I knew I was not able to drive change anymore. And I was in a very high position in this company. And that is when I knew I was going to leave the company. It didn't matter what amount of money they were going to come back and try to pay me. It wasn't going to be enough for me to stay in that company and not be able to make change and drive change, and also see that the employee voice and the employees did not matter in that situation. And I want to talk more about this story and also talk about why employees are leaving your company and your organization, and what you can do as a leader to change that, to shift it, and to really look at it from a culture standpoint. I'm Emily, and I'm here to help leaders grow, transform, and expand in all different kinds of ways. Welcome to the channel. I'm so happy to have you here. Before we dive in, you know the routine. Hit the subscribe button, comment below, engage. Let me know if you have any crazy stories like this, because let me tell you, I have a lot coming from a corporate background. And in this story, I really want to drive home the point to the leaders that are watching this, that if you are working for a company and an organization, please listen to employee voice. Please listen to what they are saying. Because once the employees see that they are not being heard or seen or respected, they are going to start looking elsewhere. And it's not going to matter. It's not going to matter what you try to put in and what you try to sugarcoat things. It's not going to matter. You've already lost them. You've lost their trust. You've lost their respect. And in this example, again, I'm not going to mention company names or that kind of stuff. I'm just going to mention my experience, what I learned from it, and to share this to help other leaders know, if you're in this situation, how to start shifting that culture. And so coming from someone from, working my way up in my career and working very, very hard, in the automotive culture, I think there's only 25% female, and 3% of those are in leadership positions, I was in a leadership position. So I always felt I had to work 150% more than the rest of the world did, just to be heard and just to be seen, and especially when it came to projects. And so I had this project to shift and change some things based upon employee voice and what the employees wanted to see in the company to, help retention, to help, drive keeping employees there. And it wasn't this time of where turnover was super, super high. And the ask wasn't going to cost a whole lot of money. It was some policy changes, some pretty easy policy changes that could be made. And so I put a proposal together, presented the proposal to multiple different people. And the same response was, well, we've always done it this way. We can't do it like any other way. There's no way that we can change this policy. The policy change wasn't going to hurt anyone. That's the thing. It wasn't going to risk safety. It wasn't going to risk quality. It wasn't going to risk, the customers that were buying the products. It was only going to change the way the employees started to feel, right? It was an employee benefit. And we're not going to go into details here. But that's what blew my mind. As a leader, I was driving for this change. And it was so hard for me to understand. It was a hard reality, but at the same time, a good lesson for me to learn that, one, I cannot work with a company that is not open to change. And to this day, even in our business, if you are not open to change and you are not open to being consulted and coached, we won't work with you. Because we know in order for change to happen and transformation to happen, you have to be open to change. You have to be open to new ideas. And everybody knows in the business world, that's where the innovation happens. But when you take that away from your employees, you're taking away a piece of creativity, a piece of their life, right? Because you're taking their voices away. And so in this example, when I realized this, that I'm not going to be able to drive this change, and it hit hard. Like, I took it really hard because I was the voice. Like, I had the responsibility of it. I was the leader of it, and I couldn't drive it, and I couldn't, bring it back home. And it was hard for me to really understand why. And then when I looked at it, this is a couple years later, I see it and I'm like, it's because none of the leaders were open to different ideas. None of the leaders were open to truly hearing employees. I'm talking about entry-level employees. And if you are a leader in an executive position, you should be listening to every single employee. That doesn't mean you change all of your policies and throw them out the door, but you need to listen and acknowledge, and listen and not to respond. Those are two different things. But really listen to your employees, hear what they are saying, and then see, how can we shift? What needs to change? Are we being closed-minded? What policies are supporting? What policies are not supporting? As a leader, this is part of your responsibility. And if you want to retain employees at your company, start listening to them, because every single person, whether in a company or outside of a company, wants to be seen, heard, and respected. And once that is lost, they check out. They check out real quick and they start going job searching. It doesn't matter. Like, they're done. Some of them will not go job searching because they think that's the only option they have to stay there. But the ones that understand it and see it, they check out. And so if you're a leader that has this large organization and you have high turnover, I encourage you to really look at, how are you listening to employees? What is the avenue for them? And don't just have some BS standard, but is it working for them? Have roundtables with your employees and really start to listen. And when they do share things, make sure that you're transparent, you're open, and that you also take action on the things that are what seem little but are huge for employees. So that way, it starts to show that you actually care. And I know even from a leader perspective, it can be very overwhelming, especially when the team is large and there's a huge organization, and to drive change in that way. And part of that is, making sure this is part of one of your KPIs. You have roundtables I've led many roundtables and been part of many roundtables, and also had the action items and the follow-up items. And the amount of feedback that I got as a leader for just to come back and say, hey, we heard your voice, this is what it was. Unfortunately, in this time, we can't do anything about it, but we do want you to know that we hear you, and that, this is a plan moving forward. It may not be a result that they want tomorrow, but in the future, then they know what's going on. And that's part of this. The other part of it is communication. How are you communicating to your employees? How are you letting them know that they are heard, seen, and respected? And when you do have these, and this is part of leadership skills, is also making sure that you know how to communicate effectively, and that you can listen to listen, not just automatic response, and that you have an open mind. And this is another thing that we do in transformative leadership, is we teach leaders these skills so they can lead more effectively. How to listen, how to communicate, how to know yourself and see yourself so you can see your employees. And it translates outside of work. Like, you start doing it with your family, you start doing it with your friends, you start showing up very differently. Because at the root of all of it, we want to be seen, heard, and respected. And when we don't have a culture like that, we start to check out. So if you want to change your attrition, you want to change the way you are retaining employees, start there and look at your culture. And if you have a leadership team that is not all on the same page and you all are all over the same place, it starts at the top. It doesn't start at the bottom, it starts at the top. Because when the leaders can come together and operate in the same space and operate the same way as far as seeing, hearing, and respecting employees, and making sure that the employees also know that they're driving for the change, that they're on the same page, And please stop putting yourself on a pedestal as a leader. I have been in multiple leadership positions, and the biggest thing I have learned, whenever I took myself off as a pedestal, things shifted. Because I'm no better than anyone else. I'm just a leader. And whenever you do that as a leader and put yourself on a pedestal, you're putting your team below you. And that's not how it works. That's a hard reality, but that's not how it works. Same way with parenting. If you think you know it all as a parent, you're in for a shocker. You're in for a surprise, because that's also not how it works. There's a fine line between putting yourself on a pedestal and another fine line of allowing disrespect. I am not, like, that's a whole other conversation for another day. But it's very important for you to realize as a leader to take yourself off the pedestal. You are human, just like the people that you are leading, and start seeing them, respecting them, and listening to them, and start changing the culture. And as an executive, you have the ability to drive this. And if you don't have the ability to drive it, and you're the only one that's driving it, and you can't get other people off board, maybe it's your time to exit the company. Because let's be clear, like, there are companies out there that still have that old mentality of this is how we've always done it. We're not going to change. And when that is deeply rooted, it takes a lot of work to get rid of those roots and to start planting in new ideas. And it takes some unbiased opinions, and that's where, like, a lot of times transformative leadership will come in, and we will be that unbiased opinion. I don't have a problem, for those that have worked with me know that I do not have a problem calling out a leader in a loving way and telling them you are acting close-minded. And right now your opportunity for growth is to open and be open to new ideas. Because guess what? The world is ever changing. And if the business is not changing in a good way, you're going to stay stagnant, and you're going to continue to have attrition issues. You're going to continue to have employee issues. And at the root of all your employee issues, there's a leadership issue. It's probably not what you want to hear, but it's the truth. And if you can, as a leader, grow your skill set, that funnels down to your team. And so if you're watching this wondering, how can I get my team on board, or how can I change the culture of it? It starts with you as a leader. And part of that is you using your voice to drive change. It's not a popular thing. And it can be very challenging to use your voice to go against everything that everyone else is doing in the company and say, hey, we have a problem we need to address. That's a strong stand. And sometimes you get to stand by yourself as a leader to drive the change that you know needs to be made for your team and for the business in whole. And that's not always a popular thing. That's always not a fun thing to do, but it's what is needed. And so when you see some of your top performers leave the company, it's time for you to start asking some questions. It's time for you to start looking at the executive team. It's time for you to take a look as a whole and be like, what is going on? And how can we shift this culture? How can we start retaining some of this? And if this is where you're at in your leadership journey or in a company, bring us in. Transformative Leadership will come in and we will do that analysis all day long. It's not the first time we've done it. We've done it before. We don't just work with coaches, authors, small businesses. We work in multiple different areas. We lead a lot of different trainings, a lot of different workshops, executive coaching. If it's within our wheelhouse, we'll tell you. If not, we will refer you to someone else. We're not going to come in there and teach benefits, but we have a referral for that. So just know that if you're in this culture aspect and you want to shift and change it as a leader, there is hope out there. There is support. But you have to take the first step to actually shifting that culture. And if you don't know where to start with the seeing, listening, and respect, and watch how it shifts. And watch your behaviors, watch your patterns. Ask yourself the hard questions, not just your team. Your team's not the only one that gets to be held responsible and accountable, but you also get to be held responsible and accountable for the results and for the attrition and for the culture, because you are in an executive position. So part of that responsibility is taking responsibility. So if you've been watching a lot of my videos, you know that I always leave you with some life work. And today, your life work for this is to look at your team and ask, just for you and your direct reports, ask yourself, how am I listening, seeing them, and respecting them from my perspective? And then ask a few of your team for some feedback. Like, what are some things that I could do better as a leader? And really understand how they operate, how they want to be seen, how they want to be heard, and what respect is for them. This is a game changer. When you do this as a leader and they share those things and they start seeing that you're taking action to listen and to hear them and to see them and respect them, they're going to show up in a complete different way. So do this life work. Let me know how it goes. Drop it in the comments. Send me a message. And again, if you need support, reach out. I'm always happy to answer questions and share this with other leaders that need it. Until next time, go do your life work.